Welcome to The Female Criminal. Tonight we investigate a crime that defies the conventional narrative of violence. This is not a story of a woman driven by passion, fear, or a desperate cry for help. It is a chronicle of profound surgical coldness, a murder committed by a young woman with a chilling psychological void. She walked into a crowded restaurant, executed her partner, and then stood watching the aftermath, completely unreadable. The case of Shirley Silva is a rare and disturbing study in female aggression and dominance. It asks us to confront a hidden facet of domestic violence. When the predator is a woman,
Nombre completo.
Shirley Silva.
¿Cuántos años tienes?
22.
and the victim is a man whose attempts at kindness and patience became his undoing. This is the story of Shirley Silva and the tragic fate of Freddy Ramírez. Shirley Silva was born in 1996 in Esperanza, a neighborhood defined by scarcity and the struggle for survival. Her environment quickly taught her that fear equals control. From an early age, she exhibited troubling signs: emotional detachment, zero empathy, and a frightening willingness to resort to violence. In school, her teachers noted she was withdrawn and unpredictable, but the incident that defined her transition occurred when a classmate commented on her clothes. Shirley's reaction was not a childish impulse, it was calculated. She pulled a blade and struck the girl in the shoulder. After this, she never returned to the classroom. It was during this time that she acquired the criminal moniker that would define her: La Gata, the cat, a name that described her sudden predatory lethality. Her innate emotional coldness was seen by some in her environment, not as a deficit, but as a sign of necessary strength. Her personality, hardened into a mechanism of survival, eliminate obstacles, complete the task, and push aside all emotion. Acquaintances described her gaze as blank, an unnerving, unreadable stare that showed no fear and welcomed no connection. This psychological void was the foundation of the monster she would become. Freddy Ramírez, a cook who had fled Venezuela for a new life, met Shirley Silva. He was quiet, friendly, and non-confrontational, qualities that tragically made him the perfect target for Silva's need for control. He mistook her blunt aggression for confidence, and her dominance was quickly established.
¿A qué te dedicas?
No,
No tienes oficio. ¿Por qué te han intervenido hoy día?
estaba ebrio.
¿Qué es lo que has hecho?
No recuerdo muy bien. Estaba tomando un romo y un litro de cerveza.
This relationship became a clear case of female dominance and systematic abuse. Shirley set the rules, limiting his contacts, demanding explanations, monitoring his every movement. When Freddy failed to comply, the emotional abuse escalated into physical violence. Freddy endured countless assaults. He was struck in the face, threatened with a kitchen knife, and on one occasion, stabbed in the arm. Each time, he minimized the injury, telling doctors it was an accident. He was trapped, not by physical bars, but by a psychological hold. He believed his patience could change her. Instead, his compliance only tightened her lethal grip. In early September 2022, Freddy finally attempted to break free, moving out and changing his phone number. But Silva, the predator, tracked him down. She insisted on one final public meeting, a final conversation that was, in reality, a final lethal appointment. The moment Freddy tried to leave, when he moved out and cut contact, he committed the ultimate betrayal in her mind. He had successfully stolen the one thing she valued most, her control over him. This loss was fundamentally unacceptable to a personality defined by the need for absolute power.
No, pero ¿qué es lo que has hecho? ¿Recuerdas lo que has hecho? O más o menos lo que has hecho.
Sí.
Ya, ¿qué es lo que recuerdas que hiciste?
Estaba caminando, bajé de una moto y me encontré a mi compañero Chomo de promoción. Y los dos estaban en el piso peleándose. Y sin ver agarré y le metí un plomo, 2 plomos.
The murder, therefore, was not a crime of passion. It was the final horrific assertion of her will. By luring him to a public place and ending his life, she made a permanent statement to the world and to Freddy. If I cannot control you, no one can have you. The stabbing was the cold surgical defense of her dominance, transforming a loss of power into an act of eternal possession. On the evening of September 28th, 2022, Shirley Silva and Freddy Ramírez arrived at Chifa Alexandra, a modest restaurant in Lima. It was a typical busy night, a crowded room full of witnesses. This was the stage Silva chose for her final act of control. As surveillance footage later showed, there was no argument, no outburst. Freddy was calmly eating, entirely unaware. Shirley, barely touching her food, was tense.
¿Lo mataste entonces?
Sí.
Ya. ¿Eres consciente de las consecuencias de tus actos?
Negativo.
Sabes que eso es penado, ¿no? Eres consciente. ¿No te sientes mal? ¿Sientes remordimiento?
Es que he estado ebrio.
Estabas
Es como si yo no hubiera sido.
Her face described by witnesses as eerily quiet. Without a word, she pulled a knife and struck. The murder was executed with stunning clinical premeditation. Freddy was stabbed 8 times in the neck, chest, and abdomen. The attack was over in seconds. The fact that Silva chose a crowded public restaurant underscores her total psychological detachment. She did not see the patrons as a deterrent. She did not care about their reactions. It was the ultimate cold statement of ownership and finality. She did not run. She stood near the entrance, watching the unfolding chaos, the screams, the blood, the frantic calls to emergency services. With that same blank, unreadable expression, she simply hailed a cab and left, the entire city now searching for the woman who killed without flinching. After the execution at the Chifa Alexandra restaurant, Silva did not panic. She did not run. She simply hailed a cab and headed toward the central bus terminal, exhibiting the terrifying calm of someone who had just finished a mundane chore. She was simply looking for someone to talk to. That someone was Francisco, an acquaintance. She looked him in the eye and confessed directly, even showing him the news reports of Freddy's murder to confirm the horrific truth. When Francisco asked her to record a video, asking, "Did you do it?" Shirley did not hesitate. Her chilling reply was, "Yes, I did it. He deserved it." The two then went to a hotel, where Silva acted as if everything were normal, drinking, smoking, and talking casually. Francisco, increasingly unnerved by her robotic detachment, realized he couldn't stay silent. Several hours later, he made the decision that sealed her fate. He contacted law enforcement, providing them with the exact address of the hotel.
Aparte,
¿El arma de fuego quién te lo dio?
lo olvidaron en la mañana en un hospedaje.
Ya. ¿Y es la primera vez que tú estás involucrada en hechos como este?
Sí.
At 8 a.m., officers arrived. The arrest was made without incident. Shirley opened the door, looked at the officers, and simply allowed herself to be handcuffed. She didn't argue, didn't try to flee, and displayed no emotional reaction, no signs of distress, and appeared fully composed. This stunning lack of humanity, documented from the moment of the crime through her arrest, solidified the prosecution's case. This was a murder born of dominance, defined by the cold, surgical mind of a female criminal who simply did not feel.
Que el chico estaba ebrio.
¿De la persona muerta?
Sí. No lo está fallecido, está en el hospital.
¿Pero qué tendrías que decirle a esa persona? Ya.
The final proof of her psychological profile came in the interrogation room. In the official video recording, Shirley sits upright, her hands folded, her voice steady and flat. The investigator asks her directly, "Do you regret what you did?" Her response was one for the criminal history books, solidifying the total absence of a conscience. She looked the investigator directly in the eye and stated, "No, I don't feel anything." The trial was straightforward. Witness testimonies and the surveillance footage confirmed the premeditation of the act. Shirley Silva was found guilty of premeditated murder. Investigators ultimately secured convictions for the murders of 2 people, including her second victim, Javier Vieira. Shirley Silva was convicted of both murders, solidifying her status as a double killer.
Lo hice inconscientemente.
¿Nunca antes has delinquido?
No,
¿No tienes antecedentes?
esta es mi primera vez que agarro un fierro.
¿Es la primera vez que te interviene la policía?
Sí.
¿Qué tendrías que decirle a los familiares de la persona?
The court noted her complete lack of remorse as a key aggravating factor. Shirley Silva was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Justice was served, but the case continued to ripple across the country. The final disturbing legacy of this case was the Shirley phenomenon. Online, her image was controversially romanticized, her cold demeanor seen by some as defiant, leading to stylized video edits and fan pages. It was a bizarre cultural detachment from the grim reality, a true criminal being elevated into a symbol. But the truth remains grounded in the facts. This was a murder born of dominance, defined by coldness and ending the lives of 2 victims, including Freddy Ramírez, a man whose kindness was tragically exploited by a woman who simply did not feel. The case of Shirley Silva stands as a terrifying portrait of the female criminal capable of pure, unadulterated coldness. It forces us to acknowledge that abuse and lethal aggression wear many faces, and that the greatest danger can come from the absence of emotion, not the presence of rage. Thank you for confronting the darkness with us on the female criminal. The case against Gata was closed with a life sentence, but her violence did not stop with Freddy Ramírez. Join us next week for part 2, as we investigate the shocking murder of her second victim, Javier Vieira, and reveal the full scope of Shirley Silva's murderous rampage. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss the conclusion.